Hello, Army! Have you ever wondered why? In a world where fame gives you every privilege and every warning in the same breath, love can still be the biggest trap even for the most adored stars on the planet? Why the brightest idols, men who can sell out stadiums, break records, and make millions scream their names, still struggle when it comes to matters of the heart? Tonight, we're diving headfirst into a territory that fans usually whisper about but never dare to unpack: the romantic blunders of BTS. Yes, the kings of K-pop, the global superstars, the legends who changed the music industry forever, but also 7 perfectly imperfect men who have stumbled, misread signals, trusted the wrong people, and sometimes broken their own hearts in the process. What if the world knew how many times the so-called golden boys failed miserably in love? What if behind every viral smile, every polished performance, every confident interview, there was a story of miscommunication, heartbreak, misjudgment, or simply not knowing how to handle affection in a world that watches their every blink? We're not here to mock, we're not here to expose. We're here to understand, because sometimes the biggest stars reflect the most human flaws, and maybe that's why we love them. Every stumble reveals a truth. Every awkward moment shows a side fans rarely see. Every heartbreak reminds us that even idols can't escape the chaos of feelings. Maybe you've asked yourself, how does someone with millions of admirers still end up in messy love situations? How can someone flawless on stage be so clueless one-on-one? How does a global icon accidentally end up in a dating rumor caused by his own mistake? Or worse, how can a small misunderstanding turn into a nationwide scandal? And which BTS member has the most chaotic track record when it comes to romance? Who overthinks too much? Who dives in too fast? Who reads signs wrong? Who trusts too easily? Who pretends not to care but ends up hurting the most? And who out of all 7 keeps repeating the same pattern no matter how much he grows? Well, tonight, we're counting down the top 7 BTS members who made the most romantic blunders. From the silent heartbreakers to the accidental flirters to the members whose sweet nature became their biggest weakness in love, each story comes with a twist you never expected. So buckle up, get comfortable. Because this isn't gossip. This is a journey into the emotional battlefield behind the spotlight. No filters, no sugarcoating. Just the raw, sometimes funny, sometimes painful truth of how even world superstars can mess things up when the heart takes over. Are you ready? Then let's begin. Number 7. Suga, the silent heartbreak that nobody saw coming. For someone known as the calmest member, the most composed, the most emotionally guarded, Suga's romantic blunders aren't loud, embarrassing, or chaotic. They're quiet disasters that unfold slowly, like cracks forming under ice. And that's exactly why they hurt the most. His mistakes in love don't come from recklessness or impulsive decisions, but from silence, hesitation, and timing that always seems to betray him. If the other members stumble because they act too quickly, Suga stumbles because he waits too long. People see him as mysterious, introspective, impossible to read, a man who thinks deeply before saying even a single word. But what they don't realize is that this very trait has created some of the biggest emotional missteps in his romantic life. Picture this. A young Yoongi sitting in a practice room past midnight, headphones on, pretending to work on a beat while actually replaying the same conversation over and over in his mind. He's the type who falls quietly, loves quietly, but loses loudly in his own head. Instead of confessing feelings directly, he analyzes them so much that the moment passes. Instead of telling someone he cares, he convinces himself they don't want to hear it. Instead of asking for clarity, he assumes the worst. And time after time, that hesitation turns into regret. One of his biggest emotional blunders was rooted not in what he did, but in what he didn't do. He once kept his feelings for someone to himself for so long that by the time he gathered the courage to act, that person had already moved on, believing Yoongi never cared at all. Imagine the irony. The man whose lyrics can carve open a heart struggled to articulate his own in real life. People who knew him back then said he always appeared so unbothered, so emotionally stable, yet only those closest to him truly understood how intensely he feels everything. When he cares with his entire soul. But when he's hurt, he hides it with a poker face so flawless that even his own members sometimes miss the signs. And this emotional distance has caused misunderstandings. There were times he unintentionally came off as cold when he was actually just shy. Times he avoided confrontation, thinking it would keep the peace, not realizing it made the other person feel ignored. Times he disappeared into work because it was easier than facing emotional vulnerability. And perhaps the most tragic part? Suga often blames himself for everything, even when the situation wasn't his fault. He carries heartbreak quietly, like a backpack filled with stones that he refuses to set down. He's the kind of person who would rather write a song about his feelings than risk saying them out loud. And while that makes his music legendary, it also means his romantic life has been full of missed chances and lingering what-ifs. Fans might assume he's the one least likely to mess up in love because he seems calm, mature, emotionally intelligent, but in reality, his biggest blunder is the inability to show how deeply he feels until it's too late. Number 6. Jhope, the sunshine who loved too hard and too fast. If Suga's romantic mistakes come from silence, Jhope's come from the exact opposite warmth, so bright it sometimes blinds him. Jhope is the kind of person whose heart overflows before he even realizes it. He's sunshine, he's kindness, he's that friend who remembers your birthday even when you don't remember his. And while this golden energy makes him one of the most beloved members of BTS, it also leads him into emotional chaos he never meant to create. Jhope's blunders in love are a combination of trusting too easily and giving too much of himself too quickly. He's the definition of someone who sees the good in everyone, even when the red flags are practically waving in his face. He once admitted in a candid moment that when he cares for someone, he falls all the way, no half measures, no defenses. That sounds romantic. Until you realize how many times that wholeheartedness has left him heartbroken. Imagine this. A younger Jhope, freshly trained, exhausted from long dance sessions, still mustering the energy to write cheerful messages to someone he liked, just to make their day brighter. But while he was investing all that emotional effort, the other person wasn't even playing the same game. They enjoyed his warmth, yes, but they weren't serious, and Jhope didn't see it until much later. This is his classic blunder. Mistaking friendliness for affection, confusing momentary attention for real interest. Because when you're someone as earnestly kind as he is, it's easy to assume other people feel just as deeply. His friends used to tell him, "You give too much," and he would laugh it off. But in private, it stung. He wanted to believe that love, when you put in sincerity, always gives something back, but real life doesn't work that way. Sometimes he'd get taken advantage of, emotionally drained, confused, wondering what he did wrong when the truth was simple. He trusted the wrong people. And because Jhope hates conflict, he rarely confronts anyone who hurts him. Instead, he pulls away silently, pretending everything is fine even while carrying wounds he never intended to have. There was even a time when he apologized for being too much, as if kindness were a flaw. That moment reveals the heart of his romantic struggles. Jhope is so focused on making others comfortable that he forgets to protect himself. And when misunderstandings happen, they're almost always because he assumed something would naturally fall into place without needing to discuss it. His love language is effort, but not everyone speaks that language. And when it goes unreciprocated, the disappointment hits him harder than he'll ever admit. He's the guy who'll hype up someone he loves, support their dreams, listen to their problems, sacrifice his own rest just to help. And sometimes, the other person simply walks away once their life gets better. Jhope's romantic blunders aren't about scandals, mistakes, or reckless choices. They're about loving sincerely in a world that doesn't always know what to do with sincerity. And that softness, that vulnerability disguised as sunshine, is why Jhope sits at number 6. If you're ready to climb higher in this emotional chaos, number 5, RM, the genius who overthinks until everything falls apart. If Jhope loves too openly, RM loves too intelligently, at least that's what he thinks. But here's the twist. Intelligence doesn't always translate well in romance. Namjoon is brilliant, articulate, disciplined, reflective, yet when it comes to matters of the heart, he becomes his own worst enemy. His blunders come not from lack of awareness, but from too much of it. He overanalyzes every detail, every text message, every tone shift, every silence, until the weight of his thoughts crushes the moment entirely. Imagine someone carrying libraries of wisdom in his mind, but struggling to say one simple sentence. "I like you. Do you feel the same?" That's Namjoon. He wants to communicate perfectly, respectfully, logically, but love is messy, unpredictable, irrational. And that mismatch often becomes the root of his romantic failures. One of his classic patterns goes like this. He meets someone who genuinely interests him, someone who stimulates his mind, someone he admires. Everything starts naturally. Conversations flow. Chemistry is there, the potential is clear, but then the overthinking begins. Am I ready for this? Will I be able to protect them? Will my career get in the way? Will they suffer because of my life? What if I hurt them? What if they hurt me? Instead of letting the connection grow, Namjoon takes it apart piece by piece, like an engineer disassembling a machine just to understand how it works, except emotions don't work like machines. And by the time he figures out how he feels, the moment has already slipped through his fingers. There was a time when someone waited patiently for him to open up. They gave him hints, invitations, chances. But Namjoon kept talking in circles around his own fear of being a burden, afraid of dragging someone into his chaotic world. And eventually, the person assumed he wasn't interested and walked away. Typical Namjoon. He didn't mess up by saying something wrong. He messed up by saying nothing at all. And then there's the guilt. Oh, the guilt. Once things go wrong, he replays everything in his mind like a detective examining a crime scene. It's not self-pity, it's self-responsibility taken to an extreme. He wants to understand what went wrong so he can grow, but in the process, he sometimes blames himself more than necessary. Another of his blunders comes from his honesty. He is extremely straightforward, sometimes brutally so. If he's unsure, he'll say he's unsure. If he's overwhelmed, he'll admit it. And while honesty is beautiful, not everyone is prepared to hear the truth laid out that raw. He once unintentionally hurt someone by describing his emotions too analytically, making them feel like he was dissecting the relationship instead of experiencing it. And, of course, there's his habit of prioritizing work over everything. Namjoon doesn't fall out of love, he simply gets swallowed by his responsibilities. He disappears into books, lyrics, training, goals, and the people who care about him feel like they're competing with the entire world for his attention. The tragic part? He genuinely never means to neglect anyone. His intentions are pure, his execution is flawed. RM's romantic blunders come from a complex combination of fear, intellect, honesty, and responsibility. He loves deeply, but cautiously, so cautiously, that sometimes the love never gets the chance to begin. And that's why RM stands at number 5, not because he's careless, but because he cares too much in all the wrong ways. When you're ready for the next emotional twist, number 4, Jin, the gentleman who misreads every signal, every single time. If RM overthinks and Suga undercommunicates, Jin's romantic blunders come from something far more ironic. He's charming, confident, handsome, polite yet absolutely terrible at reading romantic signals. Jin is the definition of someone who can walk into a room, light it up effortlessly, make everyone laugh, and still walk out completely unaware that someone was flirting with him the entire time. His mistakes aren't rooted in ignorance, they're rooted in innocence. And somehow, that makes them even more chaotic. Picture this. A younger Jin, still a trainee with broad shoulders and that world-famous face, talking to someone who clearly liked him. They'd lean in, touch his arm, compliment him, drop hints you could spot from the moon. And what did Jin do? Smile politely and assume they were just being friendly. He spent half his life unknowingly rejecting people without ever meaning to. Members have joked that he's the type who could receive a love confession and think it's a joke. But behind the humor lies a pattern that has shaped almost every romantic blunder he's ever experienced. His heart is warm, but his radar is broken. Yet the funniest and most heartbreaking part is that Jin is self-aware. He knows he's bad at reading between the lines. He's said more than once that if someone doesn't say things directly, he won't understand. And because of that, he's missed opportunities that could have changed everything. Once, someone waited months for him to make the first move. They spent time with him, shared meals, walked home together after practice, opened up emotionally, doing everything except writing "I like you" on his forehead. Jin appreciated the company, genuinely enjoyed every moment, but because they never said it out loud, he assumed they saw him as just a friend. By the time he realized what was happening, the person had already given up, convinced that Jin didn't feel the same. In truth, he did. He was simply too polite to assume, but his romantic struggles go deeper than missed signals. Because he's always trying to take care of other people, Jin sometimes hides his own feelings to avoid making anyone uncomfortable. The same kindness that makes him lovable becomes a trap. When he does like someone, he hesitates not out of fear, but out of consideration. He worries about timing, about boundaries, about whether the other person would feel pressured if he confessed. And that hesitation has cost him more than a few chances at happiness. Another common blunder? Jin's humor. He uses jokes as armor. When conversations get too emotional or too vulnerable, he instinctively cracks a joke to lighten the mood. It's not intentional avoidance, it's habit. But imagine the confusion it creates. Someone opens up romantically, and Jin responds with a funny line because he's nervous. The other person walks away thinking he's not serious, even when he is. Members have said that Jin is actually one of the most emotional, sentimental people behind the scenes. He loves deeply, remembers tiny details about others, and puts effort into making people feel cared for. But because he hides his vulnerability behind dad jokes and worldwide handsome confidence, his real feelings get lost in translation. And then there's the pressure of being perfect. Fans adore him. Strangers admire him. Even people he meets casually assume he's too high up to approach romantically. Because of that, he often gets placed on a pedestal he never asked for, and the distance makes every romantic pursuit even more complicated. Jin's romantic blunders are gentle, bittersweet, and unintentionally comedic. He's not dramatic. He's not reckless. He's simply a man with a huge heart who often doesn't realize someone is holding theirs out to him. And that's why he stands at number 4, caught between charm and cluelessness, kindness and miscommunication, affection and misunderstanding. If you're ready to step into the top 3, the ones with the most chaotic and emotionally explosive romantic mistakes, number 3, Taehyung, the beautiful chaos who falls first and regrets last. If Jin's mistakes are innocent and RM's are intellectual, Taehyung's blunders are something else entirely messy, emotional, unpredictable, and beautifully human. He's the kind of person who feels everything intensely, loves with reckless sincerity, and dives headfirst into connections that pull at his heart. But that same intensity, that same romantic idealism, often leads him straight into emotional storms he never sees coming. Taehyung is the member whose heart speaks louder than his logic. When he feels drawn to someone, he doesn't hide it. His face lights up, his voice softens, his eyes linger. He's soulful, warm, expressive, but also vulnerable in ways he doesn't always understand. And because he tends to follow his emotions more than his thoughts, his romantic life has been full of dramatic highs and crushing lows. His biggest blunder? Trusting his instincts too quickly. Tae has always believed in vibes, in soul connections, in people who feel familiar even when they're strangers. It's poetic, yes, but also dangerous. He once trusted someone purely based on the emotional comfort they gave him, only to realize later that the person wasn't genuine. They liked the aesthetic of being close to him. The idea of Taehyung, no Taehyung himself. That kind of betrayal leaves a wound deeper than words, especially for someone who guards his inner world so carefully. And yet, he still loves wholeheartedly. That's the beautiful tragedy of Taehyung. Every time he gets hurt, he tells himself to stop giving too much, but ends up giving even more the next time. He's a romantic idealist in a world that doesn't always handle idealists kindly. Imagine Tae late at night, sitting by a window, lost in thought. He's the type who rereads old messages, replays memories, wonders what he could have done differently. His blunders often come from misreading emotional intensity. He mistakes comfort for closeness, warmth for love, attention for devotion. And when he finally realizes he was the only one investing deeply, the heartbreak hits like a tidal wave. There was even a time when he thought someone was the one, simply because of how easy the conversations felt. He opened up quickly shared dreams, childhood stories, fears he rarely voices. But the moment the connection demanded commitment, the other person froze. Tae was left feeling like he had revealed too much, too soon, to someone who wasn't prepared to handle that kind of sincerity. And because he is naturally expressive, people sometimes misinterpret his friendliness as romantic interest, creating complications he never intended. He's the guy who will look at you with genuine warmth, listen carefully, laugh softly, and suddenly, the entire room thinks he's flirting. But when real feelings are involved, he becomes shy, hesitant, almost childlike. That contrast creates confusion, misunderstandings, and emotional entanglements that explode in slow motion. Another classic Taehyung blunder? Impulsive distance. When he feels overwhelmed, he disappears. Not out of anger, out of fear of being too much, but instead of clarifying his emotions, he retreats, and the other person assumes he lost interest. His silence becomes the final blow, even when he never wanted things to end. And perhaps the deepest wound he carries is this: he loves people for who they are, not what they can offer, but he's been loved for the opposite. And every time that happens, it shakes his belief in love itself. Taehyung's romantic mistakes aren't cute or subtle, they're sweeping, cinematic, and painfully relatable. He makes grand emotional decisions, dreams too big, hopes too sincerely, and ends up hurting because of it. And yet, he never loses the softness in his heart. That's why he sits at number 3, a lover at his core, a dreamer in a realistic world, a soul too bright for the quiet kind of romance. If you're ready for even more chaos, heartache, and intensity, number 2, Jimin, the sweet talker who accidentally breaks hearts without meaning to. If Taehyung is emotional chaos, then Jimin is emotional confusion, but the kind wrapped in velvet, warmth, and irresistible charm. His romantic blunders aren't explosive or dramatic. They're soft, subtle, and dangerously unintentional. He never sets out to hurt anyone. In fact, he's one of the most considerate, loving, and observant members. But that's exactly why things get complicated. People fall for him easily, too easily. And Jimin, with his natural warmth and gentle affection, often doesn't realize he's leading people into emotional freefalls until it's too late. He is the kind of person who listens carefully, smiles reassuringly, gives you his full attention. And for many, that kind of sincerity feels like love. But for Jimin, it's just who he is. One of his biggest blunders comes from this exact trait. He treats everyone kindly, so nobody can tell when he actually likes someone. It creates a mess of assumptions, misunderstandings, and unspoken expectations. Imagine being on the receiving end of Jimin's soft gaze, his thoughtful questions, his habit of remembering even the smallest things you say. Who wouldn't think he's interested? This natural charm accidentally leads people on, even when Jimin has no romantic intention. And when feelings get involved, he panics, not visibly, but internally, quietly, with a smile that hides the turmoil underneath. His kindness becomes a double-edged sword. Because Jimin doesn't like rejecting people, he hates the idea of hurting someone's feelings. So instead of setting clear boundaries, he softens his words, avoids firm answers, and tries to let things fade naturally. But in the world of emotions, fading rarely happens cleanly. His avoidance has created heartbreak more than once, not out of cruelty, but out of fear of causing pain. And ironically, that fear ends up creating even more. One especially poignant moment in his past still haunts him. Someone confessed their feelings. Someone he genuinely cared for as a friend. He didn't want to lose the friendship, didn't want to make them feel embarrassed, didn't want to say a harsh no, so he gave soft replies, gentle excuses, and emotional ambiguity. The person held on for months, believing there was still a chance. And when they finally realized the truth, they felt betrayed not because Jimin rejected them, but because he didn't reject them clearly. That's Jimin's signature blunder, emotional ambiguity wrapped in sweetness. Another pattern? He falls for people he shouldn't at the wrong time, in the wrong situation, with the wrong expectations. He once caught feelings for someone who only saw him as a comforting presence. They liked the attention, the affection, the emotional safety he offered. But not him. When Jimin realized he was being valued for the warmth he gave, not for the person he was, it shattered him quietly. Jimin doesn't explode, doesn't lash out. He internalizes. He questions himself, was I too much? Or not enough? His self-esteem dips in ways he hides behind perfect smiles and gentle laughter. He's sensitive, sometimes painfully so, and his emotional wounds linger even after the situation ends. And let's not forget his tendency to fall for people who need healing. He's drawn to vulnerability, to people who are struggling because he wants to help, but trying to love someone while fixing them, it never works. He ends up drained, confused, and carrying emotional burdens that were never his to hold. This is why Jimin lands at number 2. His romantic blunders aren't loud or reckless. They're soft, complicated, and deeply human. He hurts people without meaning to, gets hurt without anyone knowing, and loves with a heart that's almost too gentle for its own good. Only one member remains, the one whose romantic mistakes are the wildest, the most chaotic, and the most unforgettable. If you're ready for the peak of all romantic disasters, number 1, Jungkook. The golden maknae whose heart is a battlefield of impulse, intensity, and unexpected chaos. Here we are, the grand finale, the king of romantic chaos. The member whose blunders aren't just mistakes, they're full-blown emotional earthquakes. Jungkook doesn't simply mess up in love. He dives in, feels too much, reacts too fast, and ends up drowning in feelings he never learned how to tame. And that's exactly why he takes the crown at number 1. Jungkook's heart is powerful, raw, instinctive, and easily overwhelmed. He doesn't love lightly. He doesn't even like lightly. When his emotions hit, they hit like a storm. His romantic blunders are a blend of impulsiveness, naivety, stubbornness, and a kind of sincerity so intense it becomes dangerous to both him and the person involved. From the outside, he looks confident, talented, focused, unstoppable. But the moment he falls for someone, everything becomes messy, unpredictable, absolutely chaotic. His biggest mistake, the one he keeps repeating, is simple. He confuses intensity with destiny. When Jungkook feels sparks, he assumes it means something cosmic. A glance, a moment, a burst of attention, he feels it deeply, instantly, overwhelmingly. And because he's still that sentimental kid at heart, he jumps in too fast, too hard. He'll get attached before he even realizes he's doing it. Suddenly, he's staying up late reading their texts again and again, replaying conversations in his head, analyzing details he shouldn't be analyzing, imagining futures that shouldn't be imagined yet, all while the other person is still trying to figure out if this is even a date. That intensity pushes people away. It scares them. Or worse, it attracts people who like the idea of Jungkook instead of the real him. And that usually ends in heartbreak. But Jungkook's romantic chaos doesn't stop there. He's stubborn. If he thinks someone might be the one, he will fight for it even when the signs scream otherwise. He'll tolerate mixed signals, accept half-hearted affection, chase clarity he's never given, because he doesn't want to give up too soon. But when he finally realizes he's the only one trying, the emotional crash is brutal, and then he shuts down completely. His blackout phases after heartbreak are legendary. He isolates, trains harder, works longer, pretends nothing happened. But behind that discipline is a heart still bleeding from trusting the wrong person too much. Another one of his classic blunders is jealousy, not loud, not explosive, but hidden. He feels it intensely but doesn't know how to express it. He won't say, "I'm jealous." Instead, he becomes quiet, distant, brooding, and the other person has no idea what's wrong. That emotional miscommunication turns small misunderstandings into massive conflicts. Jungkook also struggles with timing. He falls for people at the worst possible moments during career transitions, during stress, during times when he can't commit. And because he hates disappointing anyone, he tries to juggle everything at once, ends up stretched thin, and unintentionally hurts the person he cares about. His loyalty, ironically, becomes a trap. He can't walk away even when he should. And let's be honest, his vulnerability is a magnet for all kinds of emotional trouble. People project onto him. They expect him to be perfect, strong, stable. But love makes him clumsy, human, exposed. The expectations suffocate him, and instead of communicating, he withdraws into silence, hoping things will fix themselves. They never do. Jungkook's romantic disasters happen because he feels too deeply, moves too quickly, and hopes too fiercely. He loves like he performs with intensity, passion, and zero restraint. It's beautiful, it's destructive, it's unforgettable. That's why Jungkook sits at number 1, not because he's the worst at love, but because he experiences it with a force that can either transform him or undo him entirely. And no matter how many times he crashes, he still believes in love with that same wide-eyed sincerity. That's the golden maknae, brilliant, chaotic, emotional, and absolutely unforgettable in every romantic mistake he's ever made.